Welcome to the Unbound Woman podcast. I'm Niamh, feminine embodiment and nervous system coach, and this is where we stop romanticizing burnout, stop hiding behind healing, and start living regulated, turned on, and fully expressed lives. We talk safety, desire, power, and what it actually takes to feel turned on by your life, not just functioning inside of it. If you're ready to soften without collapsing and leading without hardening, let's jump right in. So today's episode is going to be quite a juicy one. It is something that I have somewhat spoken about in previous episodes, but I've never actually done a full episode on. And it's taken me a very long time to decide that this is an episode I actually want to speak about, because it involves a lot of different moving factors for me. But also, I think it's incredibly important that we do speak about these things, because so many of us as women go through this stage in life, and I want to be incredibly authentic with how I speak about things. I'm not going to name and shame. I'm not going to talk about specific events that occurred, but I am going to speak about how, even though I'm somebody who prides myself on being incredibly regulated, in terms of because regulation is really an illusion, consistent regulation, but somebody who can really come back to her own center, how still these big life changes and these big life scenarios can still have an impact, even though we're still doing what we would call the work. Okay. And we are going to talk about my bridal era. For many of you, or most of you who may not know, who are new listeners, I obviously have been running the podcast since 2022, but I took a break from the podcast from June 2024, and I got married in June 2025 before I resumed the podcast. And what I would like to say is that actually the organization of my wedding wasn't something that I would have found stressful. And it was really interesting to me because, I won't lie, I never really understood the insane stress that some women go through during that bridal era part, okay? And I don't mean about wanting to look good in the dress and that kind of thing. Like, that part I can very much understand. Like, we will get to where I ended up. But in terms of trying to keep everybody happy, I never fully understood that. And to be honest with you, I still don't. And maybe I'm just incredibly lucky with the husband that I have, the man who was in my life to help during this time. But yeah, it's just something that I never really understood. And to be honest with you, there's a part of this which I'll speak about later. There's a part of this wedding, I want to say wedding, what's the word? Kind of, I don't want to call it a ritual because it's not really, but like this expectation of somebody else's wedding being all about everybody else except for the bride and the groom. And yeah, that is something that I am going to talk about in this podcast. But the first thing I do want to talk about is how different my nervous system was at different points, and how having a husband who is willing to step in and help really, really regulated me throughout a lot of this. And I don't think I would have been the same person that I was when I got married on the day if he hadn't been there. And it also really showed me where my nervous system was at and where I was at within our relationship and the trust that I had for him. So I sent out an email earlier this week talking about how when I used to travel with my ex or with friends, I had what we called a blue folder. And that blue folder would have like every boarding pass, it would have every trip we were going on, everything was printed off. I would hold everybody's passports in there, everybody's, didn't matter who they were. And that's how I would go about traveling. And when I travel with my husband now, I don't do any of that. And I don't just mean I don't do any of that. I don't do any of the booking. I don't do the dragging of bags through an airport. If we have to queue for something, if I can sit, he will tell me to go and sit. He very much organizes all of that. He organizes the car. He organizes how we're going to get to the airport. I simply just have to pack my own bags. and go, because he does his own. And I am really lucky because that mechanism of control was something that kept me in relationships where I was unhappy, because it was a form of my own insecurity of like, if I'm needed in this way by somebody and I ensure that they do need me like this, that I have control of the situation, that they're not going to leave. And being able to come away from that and have a husband who is willing to organize things and loves doing that part of it and really takes pride in showing up in that way is really, really important. So by the time we actually got to wedding time, Liam wanted to be very involved. The one thing I'll have to say is I'm really lucky in terms of Liam, because he has never really grown up around a family that weddings are seen kind of like we do here in Ireland and in other parts of the world, where parents get input, that the whole world and their mother get invited, that people get input really easily. Like, he is very much like, he's never experienced that, he's never witnessed that. So for him, our wedding was very much, well, what do we want to do? And what suits us? And what do we want? And that was really a breath of fresh air for me. As an Aquarius, I love doing things differently than anybody else does. And this was just so helpful for me. And because he wanted to be part of the organization of it all, that really took a stress off me. And at times did challenge my letting go of control phase, because we are a team and that's who we are to one another. It's not this idea of like, oh, well, he took over every decision. No, we decided as a team, but the communication, sending of money, the dates in diaries, the spreadsheets, the RSVPs, like, he managed all of that. He managed all the communication with the wedding planners, and I didn't really have to. He very much left me with the pieces of like deciding what we wanted, deciding what car I would drive that morning, my dress, my floral arrangements, the color scheme that we were using. I did up our own invitations. Like, all of those little pieces I got to do. So I got real joy from this idea of like being very involved in the creative process of our wedding, and him leaving that to me and coming to me with, right, I need you to pick X, Y, and Z, and being able to sit down and go, okay, this is what we want. He was like, these are my no's. And I'm like, well, these are my no's. So we're left with what we both kind of are looking at, and we can go from there on what we want. And I very much like enjoyed that, if I'm honest with you. Even though at the time he was working full time, I wasn't. It, one, made me trust him. It, one, made me feel really safe and held. It allowed me to just not be so hung up on every single detail. And this was the piece that I very much had to reconcile with as a woman who had never envisaged her wedding. Like, yes, I played bride and groom, and I always thought one day I would get married, but I'm not one of these girls who's had their wedding plans since she was 4. I very much struggle with the concept that it becomes your whole life. And that, like, this idea of like things going wrong on the wedding day and women freaking out about it. And I'm like, well, 90% of people didn't realize that was a thing. So, like, and this idea of the day having to be somewhat perfect, because I feel like that ruins the experience. You've set an expectation and nothing is ever going to meet that expectation because of how, you can never reach that. Okay. So yeah, like learning to lean deeper into his holding and trusting in him and understanding that he's got this. And actually, what most people don't know is our venue wasn't done up by the wedding planners that morning. Actually, Liam went up and decorated the space, and it was absolutely stunning. And he arranged the roses in every glass, and he picked them up, and he laid everything out. And like, I was able to trust that he had that. I knew he would. And he got up that morning, he got what he needed to, and he was like, I've got this. And that was really important on the morning. Like, to be fair, my morning was really stress-free. It was beautiful. It was just myself, my best friend, and then my mum and my sister came up for their hair, um, or their makeup, sorry, and we just kind of sat and chilled while we all did that, and it was just really nice. And then they went back to get ready, and like I didn't have a bridal party. That was a choice. One, because Liam didn't really want a groom's party. And I was like, well, to be honest with you, I don't feel like I needed to have that, because people who are important in my life should know that they're important in my life, and they shouldn't have to get a fancy dress for it. And also in that, I knew that my girls would help me in any way that they could during my time on the aisle, or if I needed help or anything like that. And that part I really trusted in. And same with my best friend. Like, she was there all morning with me. Like, I was aware that she would help me without having to receive anything in return. And I think that kind of brings me into a piece of like, who you have in your life is really important around your wedding, because there is so much noise from other people and other people's expectations and what they think your weekend should have been, and what what they expected out of you. And I really felt that pressure from people who were in my life. And I'm so glad that I had others in my life who were very just happy to be there, just happy to show up, just happy to experience the love between myself and my husband. Um, so what really happened for me during this bridal era, as I said, a lot of the stress of the wedding itself, and organization was with my husband, which I'm quite grateful for in a lot of ways. What I struggled with the most, and what was really interesting was, I've been on this health journey for about 2 years, and I really upped my game moving through the wedding. And I had very much had a goal of losing quite a lot of weight before the wedding. And I'm going to be really open and honest, and that didn't happen. I managed to drop it really quickly afterwards. And looking back at my time pre-wedding, when all of that weight went on, it was nothing to do with emotional eating. It was nothing to do with not showing up. It was nothing to do with that. It was actually simply energetic and nervous system. Because within 4 weeks of that happening, I started to drop weight out of nowhere, and I hadn't changed anything. Actually, I'd come out of the gym, and the gym wasn't stressing my body out, because I'm back in now and my weight has not gone up. And there's a lot of dynamics that were going on in my life. Pre my hens, I lost 2 friendships. One was quite a narcissistic, manipulative relationship. It was quite fresh in my life at the time. And it was only when this person was triggered that I noticed what was going on. So that was one, and it was quite a big one for me at the time. And then a longer friendship kind of bowed out. And it went with love from my end anyway. But what it really highlighted for me was that, like, as a friend, I know this, and it was something that my best friend had to call out in me a few years ago when we first met. But in many of my relationships, I very rarely ask for much. And what I mean by that is, I have so much empathy for people that when somebody says they can't attend something, or when somebody says, oh, I didn't think about you and that, or, when you're forgotten, while I was hurt, I could always see it from somebody else's perspective. Oh, they're going through something. Oh, something's happening for them. And, you know, I was in a friendship for it was at the time my longest friendship, where I had never met any of their other friends. I was always somehow excluded. And up until this point, I had never really noticed. Sorry, I had noticed, but I never really took offense to it. And when it came push to shove of integrating themselves with my friends, I kind of knew the answer before the answer happened. And while I was still shocked, I was kind of like, I never really ask for much. And I felt like in that moment, do you know what? I don't ask for much. And in that, I have to let this go with love. And I did. And it was hard. And some days I still get hit with grief with that particular friendship, because there's a part of me that's like, I deserved so much more in the end, but in general. And there was a lot of love there. But whatever it was within myself that clearly was a trigger, that just was what it was. And it was hard. And that had already happened. And, you know, I really do believe that getting married will show you who are actually there for you and who are there because they're looking for something from you, or you feed something for them. And while I would like to say that that was the only somewhat drama of the whole thing, it actually really wasn't. It was such a such a small piece of it all. If I'm really honest with you, I kind of had hoped that would be it and gone, but actually it's a real light. It's a real shining light on where people are at in their lives when you get married. And something had happened pre-wedding and it was making me quite nervous. Obviously, as many know, my family dynamics aren't exactly easy, and haven't been for a few years. And certain things were unfolding where, I was starting to get people's opinions, and I was kind of effectively being told how other people weren't impressed about certain things. And, you know, I had set the boundaries of the wedding very early with everyone. Anyone I spoke to was made very clear who was going to make speeches, who was being involved in what and why. And that was so clear from day one. And the only thing I would say was my intuition was telling me something and I didn't listen. And if I was to redo it now, I would definitely listen to my intuition. And it was a big lesson for me because my body also reacts. When I'm out of alignment in something, my body reacts. And that doesn't, when I say that, I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, she thinks she never should have gotten married and this isn't the relationship. And I'm like, actually, alignment can be in so many different ways. And the wedding day itself was absolutely amazing. Like, I just had the best day because I was not going to let certain things that were going on in my vicinity bug me. And I made that choice, and it was the best choice I ever made because I had such an amazing day. My husband did a great job at really putting everything together, along with the fact that certain relationships got healed in those days. And I was really happy that they were, because there were certain relationships that I always hoped would heal, and they definitely did. You also then have the other side of that. And it has been really hard for me to talk about it. As I said, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to talk about scenarios or even stories that went on. But it really does show you who is there for you and who isn't. And while you might already know that, or you have a niggle, sometimes you need to see it in action. And having those project things onto you because of their expectations of what a wedding or a hens or a stag or anything to do with that should look like, because they can't get out of their own way, or they are people pleasing in their own lives and feel like they would be expected to do a certain way, so they will. When that has a light shone on it, and they can see how happy you are, but within themselves, they're not happy, and within themselves, they can't find that freedom or the resilience to not listen to others, that gets shown. And it can be ugly, and it can be toxic, and it can be really hurtful. And what I have found so mesmerizing to me, and this is the piece, is this is where it shows you who's in your relationships with you because they actually love you and they don't need the recognition. And those who are in it because they want something from you, they're feeding off of you. And, you know, my group of girls weren't invited straight away. At the time, I had very much struggled with the idea of making new friends and inviting people and not sure if people loved me or would want to come. And I remember my best friend Jen turning to me and being like, these girls have shown up for you and they've never met each other. And look at how well they're getting on. Like, if you can't see that, if you can't see how much they love you, like, when are you ever going to see it? And she's like, I think you're going to regret not inviting them. So after my hands, I invited them all and they showed up. And unfortunately, one girl couldn't last minute, but you know, she sent all of her love and her energy was so there. But overall, they showed up. And what it showed me was not one of them wanted an input on my wedding. Not one of them had an expectation of whether or not they should be involved. Not one of them made any form of complaint or had a critique to share with me or felt like their opinion was required. And they just wanted to be there to see me happy. And they just showed up to really be there and to celebrate my love, my relationship, who we are to each other, both Liam and I and them, and all of their intricate little relationships with him and their relationships with me. Whereas those who wanted something from me, that became very highlighted even on the day and before the day and even since. And it can be really hard. It can be really hard to realize that you are never going to make everybody happy, even though it's the happiest day of your life and the best weekend of your life, but that they needed to feel visible to the rest of the world because to them, that's their expectation. And that's how a wedding should go and should be. And it should be about shouting everybody else from the rooftops and not your love for your husband, your wife, your partner. Again, I've always found very strange that this idea where parents get an input on the wedding, regardless of whether they're giving money or not, is wild to me. This idea that people think that they should have an input on your wedding, that they should be involved, is absolutely mind-boggling to me. And for me, just attending a wedding and being invited is like beautiful, because to me that's like an invitation into somebody's innermost intimate moments. And I don't believe that needs to be shared with 200, 300 people unless you're close with 200, 300 people and those people truly love you. But actually, for me, like, it ended up being like 33 people in the end. Like, it was such an intimate venue. And unfortunately, with that intimacy, you can't not see the cracks that come in different aspects, which is sad in one way, but has taught me so much about who I am and who I've become and who is really willing to be there for me and who truly understands me as a person and understands that, like, nothing was personal. Like, if somebody took something personally, it was because they wanted to, and they're projecting, and they had an expectation, even when certain things were set, that they had an expectation that they felt like something should have been met, rather than being like, I just want her to have the best fucking day ever. And that for me is like how I feel when I attend weddings for people. Like, I don't care if I get to be involved or not. It's like, I'm going because I've been invited to this most intimate moment in your life. And I want to be there to celebrate the love that you found. This isn't a show for me. Like, I find there's so many bridal setups, and like I'm all for people wanting what they want, and I really don't care what that looks like. But a lot of it is putting on a show. It's like, well, look at me, I'm getting married. And I'm like, come join me. And come join me and watch as I take this next beautiful step with the man who has changed my life. And there's such different viewpoints, and it's mind boggling to me that other people have the audacity to believe that they have the right to have an input on that, specifically where, one, they haven't shown up, but two, when it's not their day. And actually, instead of stressing, like that's one thing myself and Liam didn't want, was we didn't want people to stress out. Like, we want, to be honest with you, Liam wouldn't even had people reading. He wouldn't have had speeches because he didn't want to stress somebody out, and he didn't want to, bring that upon anyone who didn't want it. So like when we picked people to do readings, we were very meticulous about how we did that. That when we picked people who did our speeches, it was really personal to both of us. That it wasn't just like a load of people who knew us or wanted to say something. It was like, no, we don't want it very long. Like my mom and my dad, and then our best friend, because she's also Liam's best friend, did one on behalf of both of us. Because to be honest, out of everybody who was there, she knew both of us so intimately because of the journey we've all been on together, along with her living with us, along with her seeing the evolution of my husband along with me. And that was really important to us, that we had somebody there that could represent both of us in that way, rather than having somebody who only knew me or who only knew him, or, who knew him years ago or only recently, or who knew me 20 years ago, but doesn't really know the me now. And that was really important. And that's why people were asked to come in. But also, we didn't want people to make a fuss, because that wasn't why we invited them. We invited people to come and be in our intimate ceremony to each other. And that was so incredibly important. So for any of the women out there who are in their bridal era and who are really struggling right now, to let go of the noise. To let go of the noise. And I know sometimes it's not as easy, because if you have a husband who's involved in a lot of the noise and who is listening to a lot of people, it's about really sitting down and being like, what do I want? What do I truly desire? Because if you're really, really honest with yourself, you know what that is. And sure, it might be 250 people. But if it's not, and that's what your wedding's looking like, why? Who are you doing it for? Who are you trying to people please? Who are you trying to keep happy? Because what I can tell you is, I did what I wanted to do and I had the best day ever. And I fucking knew I wasn't going to keep everyone happy. But those who want to be there because they actually love you, those who want to show up and just be there to witness the intimacy and to witness this next phase of your life, they don't give a shit. I really, truly mean that. Those who actually love you unconditionally and don't expect something from you in return are there because they fucking want to be. Because they adore you. They don't have any expectation. They're the type of people who would show up if you got married in the middle of a farm at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. Like, they are the people who truly love you and who truly are willing to show up. Those who have an issue around any aspect of it have an issue because of where they're at in their lives and their expectations of relationships. And there's one thing to have a reciprocal expectation of like how you show up. And then there's another where it's like, you would rather somebody stepped over their own happiness to make you comfortable and happy. That's not a friendship. That's not a relationship. That's an exchange. That's a transactional relationship. And that very much has been highlighted to me. And I would ask any bride going through that right now, that if people can't love you for what you want, are they truly people that you want in your life moving forward? Because it can be really hard to go through this phase and be confronted with who you actually thought was there for you and who actually is just waiting for your downfall. And that is a very difficult place to be. And I am so, so glad that I had the awareness around myself. I had a husband who does not budge when he's made a decision. I mean, not to do with me, but I mean, when he decides that it's going to be our way or the highway, that's very much who he is. And he's very strong in his opinion, and he's not afraid to confront people in that. And he is always my greatest supporter, along with finding my tribe and group of women who can stand with me and celebrate with me in a way that I never knew friendships could be before. So yeah, this is quite a vulnerable podcast episode. As I said, it's taken me a very long time to feel like I can come on the microphone and speak about it, because things are still unfolding. It's wild to think that a wedding can trigger so many people who could really do with doing some work on themselves, and can show you where you have not been living in alignment with what you truly know, with the truth. And that is a really hard place to be. And the reason I'm speaking out about it is because while we talk about the stress of weddings online, and we talk about, oh, my bridal era, and like I'm trying to lose weight, and we found my dress, and oh my God, the caterers have cancelled on us 3 weeks out. And don't get me wrong, I can imagine it's really stressful, but we don't talk about the realness of how hard it can be with others in your life who no longer actually understand you, or who aren't there for the right reasons, and who have an expectation. Or it could be family, right? It could be family, it could be friends, it could be an aunt, it could be an uncle. Like, you are going to really understand who you are if you're willing to at the end of getting married. It's really not about, just getting married. Like, I want a marriage, I don't just want a wedding. And what came for me very much so was a healing path that I was willing to walk on. But the reality of that, while I was very aware of that, does not mean it was easy. Does not mean that there's days where it still really gets to me, because to be honest with you, there's such a massive part of me that's just like, oh my God, you just watched two people get married and celebrate their love. Like, just be fucking happy and get the fuck over yourself. Like, there's such a massive part of me that, like, if this was my friend's wedding and anything like this went down, I'd be like, dudes, just get over the fuck over yourselves. Like, just, if you don't love them, get out. Like, very much so in that space, because yeah, it's hard. It's like, these people just love each other. Like, just fucking celebrate it. Like, what's so wrong? Like, your shit is your shit. Go deal with it. And that, I know how hard that is. I know how deeply unsettling it is to be like, wow, you can't even love me enough to just put shit aside. You can't even love me enough to show up as your best self. You can't even love me enough to be like, this is all she ever wanted. This is beautiful. I'm just going to show the fuck up in whatever way she needs me on the day. And we need to talk about these things. It's not easy. And I know this podcast is going to get to wherever it does, and it's going to blow up things. And I'm like, you're triggered because it's because the truth hurts. The truth is triggering, and it just is what it is. So while this isn't my usual happy podcast, we are exactly actually a month out from our year anniversary when I'm speaking this, which is so wild and so divine in its own timing. And I do want women to know out there that if you are going through your bridal era and you're struggling and you just want somebody to talk to, my DMs, my inbox is always open. I won't sell to you. I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to navigate. And to be honest with you, I'm just really lucky I had a support system who was willing to show up for me and to reflect to me where maybe I was not showing up as my best self, but also where I didn't have to compromise, where I didn't have to just people please to keep others happy, that I could show up in the way that I wanted to. And to be honest, my wedding day was so magical and it did reflect a lot to me. It was surreal at moments, but it also gave me a choice on the day. The choice was, are you going to let this rule you and ruin you? Or are you going to choose to just be fucking happy and get on with it and spread your joy and celebrate? And I can tell you, I took the second path and it was the best decision I ever made. Because I point blank refuse to allow others to take my joy from me, or for me to hand over that power for them to do that, because this is my life now. And yeah, as I said, if you're going through it, and maybe it's not even your bridal era, maybe you're just going through it right now, my door is always open and I'm so happy to have a chat. But I hope everybody's good and I'm sending all of my love. I will be back to my regular content next week. We're gonna have so much to talk about over different things that are changing in the business, along with things that I'm launching, and I'm just really excited. So I'm sending you all my love and I'll talk to you soon.